The Weaver and the Sky God's Thread. The day the sky began to unravel started like any other for a little girl named Ilara, except for the single shimmering thread that fell into her lap. Ilara was a weaver, just like her mother and her grandmother before her, but she didn't weave tapestries of wool or linen. She wove with sunlight on dew, with the silver trails of snails, and with the deep, dark blue of a twilight shadow. Her loom was an old, gnarled branch of the great oak, and her shuttle was a gift from the wind itself. The thread in her lap was unlike anything she had ever seen. It was the color of a new idea, humming with a quiet, cosmic energy. She looked up. A thin, jagged scar was tearing through the fabric of the blue sky, and from it tiny, brilliant stars were winking out, one by one. The world was growing dimmer, quieter. The sky god's great tapestry was coming undone, and this was the last fraying end of it. A voice like the rustling of a billion leaves filled her mind. "Catch the thread, little weaver. Mend the sky, or all will be unmade." Ilara's heart hammered against her ribs. Her! Mend the sky? But the thread was already twisting in her fingers, pulling her towards her loom. With trembling hands, she tied the end to the bottom beam. The moment she did, the branch loom groaned and stretched, becoming as vast as a bridge, the thread glowing fiercely. She began to weave. She passed the shuttle through the warp threads, and where it went, the sky scar began to knit itself back together, the color bleeding back into a soft, perfect blue. But the unraveling was faster. The tear raced ahead of her, spilling out whispers of forgotten songs and pockets of cold, airless void. Suddenly, the shadows came. They were not creatures of darkness, but of nothingness. They slithered up from the edges of the world, formless and hungry, drawn to the unraveling parts of the sky. Where they passed, color didn't just fade, it ceased to exist. The vibrant green of the grass became a hollow gray, and the memory of its greenness was stolen. One of them oozed towards her loom. Ilara gasped as the branch near her hand turned ashen and brittle. The shadow was trying to unmake her loom. She focused all her will, weaving faster, the sky god's thread blazing as she pushed the color back, forcing the shadow to retreat with a silent hiss. But more came. They swarmed the base of the great oak, turning its mighty roots to dust. The loom shuddered. Ilara knew she couldn't fight them and weave at the same time. She was losing. Just as despair began to curl in her chest, she remembered her own threads. Reaching into her pocket, she pulled out a spool of laughter, woven from the sound of bubbling brooks and chattering sparrows. She threw it into the air. The laughter erupted, a bright sonic burst that made the shadows flinch back, confused by the sudden joyful noise. It wasn't enough. They regrouped, advancing again. Next, she threw a thread of pure golden courage, spun from the first brave crocus of spring. It bloomed in the air, a shield of light that held them at bay for a few precious moments. She wove frantically, the skymen now halfway done, but her special threads were almost gone, and the shadows were learning, becoming bolder. The lead shadow stretched itself into a thin, cutting blade and shot towards the central warp of her loom. If it snapped, it would all be over. This was it. Ilara had one thread left. It was her most precious one, a thread of love, woven from her mother's lullabies and the warmth of a shared blanket on a cold night. It was soft and seemed too gentle for such a battle, but she had no choice. As the shadow blade descended, she didn't throw it at it. Instead, she wove it directly into the sky. She poured every memory of love into her movements, the feel of her father's hand, the loyalty of her old dog, the kindness of a shared smile. The sky god's thread erupted in a light so brilliant and warm, it didn't push the shadows back, it filled them. And a miraculous thing happened. The shadows, creatures of absolute nothing, had never known what it was to be. The love light didn't destroy them, it gave them form. One sprouted feathery wings of starlight. Another became a small drifting cloud sighing with rain. The lead shadow softened into a friendly, curious night breeze that twirled around Ilara once before floating up into the sky she was mending. The way was clear. With a final mighty effort, Ilara sent the shuttle flying. Whoosh! The last loop of the thread sealed the final jagged edge of the tear. The silence returned to Ilara with a gratitude so vast it felt like a hug from the universe. Thank you, little weaver. You used the greatest magic of all. You did not fight the void with emptiness, but filled it with what was missing. Ilara kept the thread, a simple silver necklace she wore forever after. And on the clearest nights, when the sky is a perfect, untorn tapestry of indigo, if you listen very closely, you might hear the friendly whisper of a night breeze that was once a shadow, and know that the most powerful magic in any universe is not to destroy, but to create.